It was a beautiful September evening that turned tragic. 30 years ago this Sunday, USAir Flight 427 crashed in Beaver County just minutes before it was supposed to land at Pittsburgh International Airport.
And tonight we're taking a look back. September 8th, 1994. Smoke billows into the air over Hopewell Township after USAir Flight 427 seemingly fell out of the sky.
And we looked up, and it looked like, it was smoke and stuff, and it just come down and just exploded.
We looked up, and the last thing we saw was the tail going straight down into the ground.
The plane, en route from Chicago, was getting ready to land at Pittsburgh International Airport when it crashed into a wooded ravine just beyond the Green Garden Plaza shopping center. Witnesses and emergency crews from all over rushed to the scene, hoping to help rescue survivors.
My wife's an EMT, so she said, let's get up there. So we went running up there. We were about probably the third or fourth car that got up in there. And me and another guy, he was a fireman from Crescent, he was off duty. We went running down in there and we was yelling for people. We couldn't find anybody, didn't hear nothing. The parts of the plane were laying all over the place.
There were no survivors. All 132 people on board were killed in an instant. More than half of the victims were from this area, including employees of U.S. Steel, PNC, and Westinghouse. There was a family of 5 from Upper St. Clair, and the sister-in-law of a Kennedy Township police officer who responded to the scene.
Do you want to see the scene?
I want to know, right? I want to help too. It's my job. I want to help, and also for my sister-in-law's sake.
Can you do that? You can help knowing that you may have a relative up there.
Yes.
In the days that followed, local, state, and federal officials decontaminated the crash site, recovered what remains they could, and began to try to figure out what caused the plane to crash.
Our preliminary information from the flight data recorder is that the aircraft rolled to the left.
The investigation took 4 years, the longest in aviation history. The NTSB eventually determined the crash was the result of an out-of-control rudder on the Boeing 737 caused by a defective valve that caused the plane to pitch, roll, and spin straight into the ground. It all happened in less than 30 seconds.
Boeing made almost $1 billion investment in changing the rudders on all the Boeing 737s that fly, which of course is still the most popular aircraft in the world.
But finally knowing the cause was only half the battle for the victims' families, who felt left in the dark by the airline and investigators in the wake of the crash.
People that were at the airport to meet the flight were locked up in the USAir Club and weren't told anything. What's going on? Nobody would say anything. They really didn't want you knowing what was going on, and they really didn't want you talking to each other.
They fought for better treatment of plane crash victims' families, eventually helping to pass the Aviation Disaster Family Assistance Act, which sets standards for notifications, briefings, and grief counseling. And while that will never bring back the 132 souls who died on Flight 427, it does give meaning to their lives and a purpose to what remains, 30 years later, the worst aviation disaster in Pennsylvania history.
I just believe with all my heart that these people did not die in vain and that they need to be remembered.
There is a memorial to the Flight 427 victims at the crash site, but that's on private property and it's not accessible to the public. There is a public memorial in Sewickley Cemetery.